The American avant-garde composer John Cage's music was very much about the act of performance itself and confounding our expectations of what we think music might be or how we might experience it. Very much with the aim of stimulating our awareness, and he gave a lot of lectures, and they were similarly about bringing our awareness to the front in how we were actually experiencing them. So there's these various kinds of devices: silences, nonsense, all kinds of linguistic tricks, but sometimes they were just more or less straight talking. And there's one instance where he's talking about how important it was for the audience to actually engage with the talk rather than just sitting back saying, so it's really important that you're actually engaging with me as I'm talking and not, say, just sitting there writing notes. Because obviously a lot of these are in university context or whatever. Saying, you there, young man in the third row. I said, it's really important that you're engaging with me directly and not just sitting there writing notes. It's yeah, I got that. Knowing and doing. Last week I was beginning to try and open up this theme about knowing and doing in terms of how we're actually talking. And okay, you're listening to me now and hearing, but what's actually happening with this hearing? Is this hearing a knowing or a doing, or in what sense is it each? I mean, is our awareness itself a knowing or a doing? We get some of the different possibilities of this if we go back to the way we talk about the Buddha's realization. We talk about the Buddha's enlightenment, which has a kind of sense of an event, and that afterwards he knows stuff. He's enlightened about everything. On the other hand, we talk about the Buddha's awakening. That has much more of the sense of a process about it, as something which unfolds. And what's the difference between being awake and not being awake? Well, it's not so much that we know stuff or know different stuff. It's that our awareness is different. We're aware differently. And because we're aware differently, we can act. We can begin to act with intention. So a doing. So is our awareness more a knowing or a doing? Actually, we can talk about different kinds of knowing as well, and maybe it's worth exploring that. And I was thinking one way which we can do that is thinking about, well, something like cycling. Now, there's lots of knowings that I can think of about cycling. We can start by thinking about the kind of way in which we think that language normally means. And language points to something. It's nouns, it's naming things. So I can point at a bike and go, bicycle. Yeah, absolutely. Saddle, crank, pedal. That's very much knowing that. Separates out subject and object. I know about that. I've got facts at my disposal. Now, if I ride a bike and you ride a bike, and sometimes we ride a bike together, and that's part of our relationship, that's part of knowing you. Well, that's different because that's not really about subject and object at all. It unfolds over time. So it's got duration, but it's about the relation. It's about interaction between things, in this case between people. That's a different kind of knowing. And there again, if I actually know how to ride a bike, well, if I'm cycling, it's a really good idea if I know how to ride a bike. But that's not quite either of these things, is it? This is know-how. And what's this know-how? Is this subject and object? I know that? Well, no, because I can read the book about riding a bike, and that might be helpful. I can know that it's about balance, it's about complex feedback loops between hands and legs and eyes and, sense of this and that. And I can know all that. But that's not really going to help me when I'm actually out there trying to ride a bike. And in actual fact, my actual know-how of really knowing how to ride a bike is all about complete integral awareness of all my different senses, responsiveness to the environment. It's not separate. And in fact, I feel the ground through the handlebars. I feel the ground through the saddle. I feel the movement, the momentum. I develop a sense of how hard I can apply the brakes or not. All of this stuff, this is integrated, this is responsive, this is very directly in the terms that I like to talk, not separate. We could even talk about me, well, obviously the bike becomes in some ways literally an extension of my senses. But we can also talk a bit about me maybe in the sense of becoming bike, that I become, there's not really any separation between me and bike. I'm the thing that enables the bike to go forwards, the bike that's the thing that enables me to go fast, but not separate. And we can think about that a little bit more, because there's actually other ways of knowing about, aren't there? Like I say, I can know to name the different parts of the bicycle. I can know that there's a bike, that people race bicycles. I can know there's a race called the Tour de France. That's very different from having a knowledge about something like the Tour de France. Do you remember back in 2012 when so-and-so got the spotty jersey going up outdoors or whatever? And it's a different kind of thing. And it involves duration. It begins to involve relationship. I can know about fixing up a bike, not just that this is that and this, that actually I'm used to, the bull races, how do these happen? Yeah, okay. It's not just that, I've got experience of doing it. And again, it becomes much more than a simple subject-object, me thing. It's much more of an involved relationship. So we've got these different kinds of knowing. And obviously when I'm actually riding a bike, well, that's literally a doing. And knowing and doing come together here as an activity. And maybe awareness is a bit like that. Then there's a different kind of knowing, a different kind of awareness that I know that I'm aware. I know that I can ride a bike. I know that I am riding a bike. And that's when we definitely, we get involved in questions of consciousness and the thinker. And the reason I mention this is because this is quite often the kind of ways in which we tend to get a bit lost when we're doing zazen. I'm experiencing the nature of consciousness or something like that. Well, actually, I'm just asking you to experience whatever it is you're experiencing. We can worry about the nature of consciousness another time. What's the actual experience here? And how does that unfold over time? How does that relate to all my previous sittings? How does that relate to the other aspects of my practice? There's this totality, this whole, this not separate. And in fact, there's really interesting, complex, logical arguments about, am I always, aware of myself being aware of it? That's for another day. For the moment, I'm just interested in this directly experiencing of, this. Maybe it helps to go sideways here as well, because, in one sense, my dog's clearly aware. He's probably not aware of himself being aware, but he's definitely aware of quite a lot of things. And does anything make my awareness different from my dog's awareness? Well, obviously in some ways, yes, but is that a major difference? Is that a kind of difference in nature and being? Don't know. Let's get closer in. What about my heart? Is my heart aware? I think we can sort of say yes, can't we? Because, okay, if I'm going to cut it out and take this, I don't know, what do they weigh, a couple of kilos or something, put it on a slab, well, yeah, whatever. But actually, my actual heart, the heart as it is, being part of this thing that is me, responding to hormone levels, responding to demands of the muscles, responding to the supply of oxygen from the lungs, all these complex, infinite micro adjustments and feedback loops of this as an integrated system, again, a whole. Well, if that's an awareness, actually what is? Can we say that the heart thinks? Maybe, but clearly there's no thinker here. Maybe it's a kind of thinking, maybe it's a kind of awareness, but there's no being here, separate from the actual experiencing, the actual act of awareness itself, part of this complex whole. If we take this back to the bike, who rides the bike? Me, obviously, but yeah, hang on a minute. Nagarjuna, our key philosopher, Buddhism argues, well, actually, if we talk about the rider of the bike, the rider only exists when there is riding going on. Clearly you can't have a rider before the riding, you can't have a rider after the riding. Maybe you can't have riding without a rider. And it's at this point that some people go, oh, well, he's just playing with words. And in one sense that's true, but what he's trying to point to, I think, is two different things, and I think both of them are quite important. Firstly, the way that we're always playing with words. And because I know how to ride a bike. Yes, I'm a rider. I'm a cyclist. Okay, so I make extension a permanent thing out of what's actually an event, an activity. I make a thing out of a doing. Okay. But actually at the level I've just been talking about, what is this rider? Well, this rider is this complex set of integrated know-hows that somehow allow me to balance on top of this thing and make it go forwards at the same time and not crash, usually, and actually be aware of what else is going on around. Is that the same me that has a passport and, the rest of it took A-levels 100,000 years ago? Is that the same me? Well, yes, like everything in Zen, yes and no. But it's its own thing. It's this event, activity, this riding as manifesting through me and the bicycle. So, and this is getting back to the point really, when I'm sitting in zazen, is my awareness more like riding a bike? Or is it like a security guard sat in a room full of CCTV monitors, watching for the shoplifter or the person misbehaving or whatever. What's actually happening here? Those of us who are very old remember the numbskulls. Those of us who are younger probably saw the Pixar movie Inside Out, and maybe Inside Out 2. It's the same idea. Inside my head, inside my brain, there are people watching and controlling and doing this and doing that. So somebody's listening and somebody's seeing and somebody's thinking it through. And of course, in this sense, this is what we call in philosophy recursive. It's got, well, who's inside their head doing the looking or the listening or the thinking it through? But is my awareness more like that, separated out into layers? Or is it more like this integrated whole of riding a bike? Is it a knowing that, separated out into subject and object? I am aware of this experience. I am aware of this sensation. And sometimes we say that because it can be useful to point that out to ourselves. But I think we can go beyond that. And just as I don't think it's entirely a figure of speech to say, when I ride and I ride well, I become bike. When I'm sitting, I become my breath. I become this sound. I become this warmth or this cramp in my knee. Whole. So perhaps we can talk about my zazen as a doing in a sense, more than a knowing. And again, these are all just pointers. Try looking at it this way. Try feeling it this way. Does this make sense? Because my whole body is involved in this. And my mind and my thoughts and my emotions, they're all just aspects of this whole, not separate. Becoming skin, becoming heart, becoming breath, becoming the sensation of the breath, becoming, for me now, the sensation of my speaking. I can feel my speech on my lips. I can feel the difference in the set of my clothes as I move forwards because I'm getting closer to the mic, because I'm conveying that this is important, or this matters, or I feel this, because this is doing as much as it's knowing. So how are you hearing me? How are you hearing this?